Welcome to the Boxing Source Midweek Report, where we tackle the latest topics in the sport of boxing here up to this point every single Wednesday. Time to start the show. Mic check 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Everybody, what's going on? What's happening with y'all? What's happening? What's good? How are y'all feeling today? Here we are for Wednesday. Y'all know what it is for Wednesday. It is time for the midweek report here, checking in. We kind of like have been off for the couple of days there. With Sunday, pretty much was like out of town Sunday or whatnot. So I kind of took that weekend off of sorts. Kind of went on vacation or whatever it is. I mean, or whatever you want to call it. So that's what's going down with that. And also, for Tuesday, we had Coach Ronnie Shields, take a break for this week. Got a few things there, to take care of. So, blessings to Coach Ronnie Shields, blessings to your brother Joseph Herron. You know what I mean? And we'll be back at it with the show on its regularly scheduled time next week. But we're here, you know what I'm saying, with the midweek report, man. What's good with everybody that's checking in? We got my guy Smitty in the building. Let's talk about it. You know what I'm saying? The elephant in the room. We might have a couple of elephants in the room here for today, but we'll figure it out. You know what I'm saying? And shout out to Mara the Prince in the building. Salute to you. And yeah, we're gonna be talking about that. There with the Eastside Cruz Lamont Roach Jr. card here. So that's one of the major topics we got going down. And my guy Jay Watts in the building, man. What's happening with you? You know what I'm saying? We had a few things that came through the news wire. For upcoming. This weekend there's supposed to be fights at the Barclays Center and everything like that. So we had some news last weekend, involving Richard Comey. Because some people thought that he would have been on that card at Barclays Center this coming Saturday, but that's not necessarily happening. Initially, he was supposed to fight Ashton H2O Silva, and then it ended up being not Ashton Silva, and then it could have been Nahir Albright, but then that was like, nope, you ain't even having that happen either. So Richard Comey out of that card there for Barclays, and of course it is Farewell to Brooklyn involving Danny Garcia going up against Daniel Gonzalez there in the main event. So I'm gonna be I'll be out there for that fight card and everything like that. It's supposed to be, I guess, the last fight at the Barclays Center for Danny Garcia, or last fight period. I don't know, but kind of like making it look up in the air as far as like all that's concerned, right? But that being said, we got a few things here we're going to be talking about. I wanted to kind of put on the little banner there, of course. You know what I'm saying? So you got that's what's going on. Yeah, I'm going to see about getting the hotline open here for the show as well. So we're going to see how that's going to work out too. But with that being said, I wanted to see about getting on this thing here for the rankings because that was like one of the big topics here for boxing, right? Because we got the updates there when it comes to the 154-pound division, right? Just going through it. I mean, Ring Magazine has their rankings for each division. Boxing Source, we don't quite do that. We ain't getting into every single division. You know what I'm saying? I'm not doing no top 10 or no top 5 for no junior flyweight. Like, I'm sorry, I ain't gonna do it. I'm not gonna do like a top 5 or a top 10 for cruiserweight. Sorry, ain't gonna do it. I give y'all the pound for pound rankings, and that's about as good as it gets. So with this, we got like Ring Magazine. Sometimes I refer to the Transnational Boxing Rankings Board, but I wanted to get into this thing here, particularly with the junior middleweight, or as they say, the super welterweight division, right? So want to see if I can share the screen here, you know what I'm saying, share it and everything like that. So let's get it to it, man. I mean, and you see what Smitty already has like a comment on it. So we're going to get into this here. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and share this here with the ring. All right. So, you have that there as far as like a Ring magazine or lineal champion is vacant. Of course, I was pretty much since Jermell Charlo left the division to face Canelo Alvarez back in 2023. Right, but now they got this thing here with number one at Virgil Ortiz Jr. Number one is Virgil Ortiz Jr., y'all. Okay. Number two, you got Sebastian Fundora. Number three, you have Israel Madrimov, right? Now, at number four, there you got Bakram Murtazaliev. Number five, you got Erickson Lubin. Number six is Xander Zayas. Number seven is Brandon Adams. Number eight is Jesus Ramos. Number nine, they had the Basketball at number 10, so I think they didn't actually update this. This is supposed to be updated. So I'm gonna go back real quick because actually that makes it even worse. if you want to think about it, that actually makes it worse. So here was the thing, right? So here they put in the updates, right? But I gave you like the first six. They added Boots Ennis there at number 7, and they put everyone else down the spot, right? So they put Brandon Adams down, Jesus Ramos down, and Abbas Barao down, right? Now, y'all see as Smitty is talking about what was that ranking, yo? What was that? That was absolutely crazy. Now, here's my thing, right? Okay, check it. First, you have Virgil Ortiz there at number 1. Okay, you got Virgil Ortiz there at number 1. Virgil Ortiz is, what did they say? The WBC interim champion. So you mean to tell me that you're going to have the WBC interim champion ranked above the WBC full champion? Okay. Now, not only that, you're having a guy in Sebastian Fundora, right, that has been able to, defeat Tim Tszyu twice, right? Defeat, what was it? Cordell Booker, right? In his past 3 fights. So 2 fights with Tim Tszyu and 1 fight with Cordell Booker, right? Now, you compare that to like something with the Virgil Ortiz Jr., right? That, has had, pretty much, kind of like a few guys that are on his resume. But here's what his resume is ever since entering the 154-pound range, the 154-pound division. Okay? Frederick Lawson, Thomas Delorme, Sergey Boychuk, Israel Nedrimov. Okay? Those are the 4 fighters. Now, Madrimov, it was a former champion, but he was basically a champion and only made 1 defense against Terrence Crawford and lost to Terrence Crawford before losing to Virgil Ortiz. Okay? So you got that, right? Boychuk, y'all see what happened in the Boychuk fight. A number of people felt like Boychuk should have been able to get the win off of that. All right? But then you got Boychuk that, has, what was it? He had that close fight there against Michael Fox. Knockdown should have been scored in that. And his fights against Brandon Adams. Brandon Adams beat him twice. Last one in September. So it's like, can you really rate Virgil Ortiz's resume higher than a Sebastian Fundora? Come on, man. You know what I'm saying? Says who rate an amp up Virgil versus Boots if it happens. Yeah, I mean we got to see how that goes, man. We got to see how that goes, man. Says who might fall, make the fight if Virgil loses. Who he fall back on then? Kid Austin. Yeah, he said the ship doesn't sail with Ryan. Yeah, for sure. It definitely sailed with Ryan, man. And yeah. Fox won that one, man. Man, that dude, man, the referee didn't count that knockdown. He should have counted that knockdown, and that was the thing as far as like whatever it is. There's a question: will someone step in for Fundora against Thurman? Not looking like so. There's like a rumor going around that the fight might still be on. It's just going to be pushed back, a couple of months. So, we got that's coming up because they said it might be part of a card that's headlined by, a legend. But the opponent that was proposed out there is like absolutely insane. You know what I mean? But yeah, I'm gonna just go back to these rankings, right? So I said Fedor, right? You got Madrimov that's there at number 3. Madrimov that has had what? 2 consecutive losses. So you got Israel Madrimov that's there at 10, 2, and 1, and he has 2 consecutive losses. Terrence Crawford at last August, and then Virgil Ortiz Jr. on February 22nd. But yet he's a top 3 guy. You got Bakram Murtazaliev there at number 4, the IBF champion, who has not had a fight this year. And we're gonna see if we can talk about Bakram, here. But actually, I'm gonna go into that. You know what I mean? Because Bakram, here's the issue with him, right? He's the IBF champion. His last bout was against Tim Tszyu last October, right? And now they're saying, oh well, they trying to find a fight for him and everything like that, and everybody's ducking him. No, because this is the same Bakram Murtazaliev that wouldn't even be inclined to fight a Charles Conwell when Charles Conwell was raising his hand saying that, hey, I want to go ahead and fight you for that belt. And then Bakram was saying like, nah, bro, you ain't big enough, so you can't necessarily be an opponent for me. And now here we are. You got, what is it? Erickson Lubin that would have been as mandatory. Went out, I guess, a purse bid, and went and shipped and sale with a purse bid. And now you got, Erickson Lubin going up against the WBC interim champion there in Virgil Ortiz. That's going to be over in Texas coming up on November 8th. Now you got Bakram Murtazaliev. Looks like it's scheduled to have another purse bid with Josh Kelly on October 21st. But I'm going to tell y'all this, right? Isn't this the same Josh Kelly that folks were thinking could have been the opponent for Jerome Boots Ennis? But remember, that whole thing about it was with Boots Ennis being there in Philadelphia and having a high price tag, or some would say a high price tag, how much was Josh Kelly going to get paid? And if he wasn't going to get paid for that much against Boots Ennis, think about how much he could get paid for a fight against a Bakram Murtazaliev unless they come up with a deal that favors Josh Kelly, because this is the same Josh Kelly that's been fighting on Riyadh season cards, fought, over there at Wembley Stadium last September, you know what I'm saying? And got the bread for that. So you mean to tell me that he's going to go from that to facing Bakram Murtazaliev for who knows? So let's see, how much is going to be bid on here for this purse bid, because the splits for the IBF, I'm not 100% sure on the splits for the IBF, but if they kind of like give a good amount of favoritism towards the champion, then they like, you know what, we good on that. So as far as I know, Bakram versus Josh Kelly, good luck with that. You see there Erickson Lubin there at number 5, as I mentioned, facing Virgil Ortiz coming up on November 8th. You got Xander Zayas there at number 6, WBO champ. You feel me? He says he's looking for a fight in December over in Puerto Rico. And if y'all been listening to the Midweek Report over the past couple of weeks, we have a open and ready volunteer to step up to face Xander Zayas there in December, right? And that is Jaleel Major Hackett. Yes, he did have a fight here in September, but he said he's ready to get back in the ring and face Xander Zayas. And that would be like a voluntary defense there for Xander Zayas. But hey, we got to see how that goes. Feel me? Then, as I said, Jerome Boots Ennis there, of course, is a former ring champion at welterweight, former WBA and IBF champion at welterweight, had his fight there at the Wells Fargo Center. And that was just easy work. Absolutely easy work. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Lone Star Steph in the building, man. Says hit the like button, share, and subscribe, man. The support, man. My guy Steph in the building. It says it's interesting how matchups get made today. Yeah, I mean, shout out to my guy L Dub. Sometimes, he sees the angles that be, happening when it comes to the rankings and how the rankings change as far as like the sanctioning bodies, and you kind of like see who could be, lined up for a fight going off of the rankings. You feel me? It says trying to cherry pick 24/7. Hey, but I mean, the thing about it is, man, I've said this in the past, and I keep saying it. Right now, in this particular era, it's like every fighter gets a level of scrutiny for the opponents that they have. Because it's either, a one, you got to stay active, or two, you don't have as many big fights as possible. Like the days of as I say, Julio Cesar Chavez are done. The days of Archie Moore are done. You're not, or Sugar Ray Robinson, they're done. You're not gonna have fighters having about 200 or 100 or 200 or so fights in their professional careers. That is not happening. Everybody, it looks like every fighter wants to be on TV or of some sort, and because of that, that involves even more money into the pot. And if you got these fights that are being put out there, some you end up seeing, some end up getting rejected. And so it's like, what are you going to end up doing when you got a number of these fighters that want fights that kind of like with kind of get them sharp. But if you're paying them a certain minimum per fight, then you're gonna have to put them on TV in order to make up for it. All right, back to this thing here. I'll talk about it with Brandon Adams having his wins over Boachuk. So we're seeing if he get back in the mix there at 154. You got Jesus Ramos there at number 9. Thing about that is, it's going to be that Jesus Ramos is still looks like he could be lined up to face Shane Mosley Jr. for that WBC interim title there at middleweight. Now, of course, it was scheduled to be on October 25th, but with that main event scrapped there for October 25th, looks like it could get moved, and we're going to be talking about that here in a little bit later. And then you got a Basparao there at number 10, the WBA champion. There, of course, having this win over the former interim champion there at that point. So you got that. Steph in the building, he says, hey, overall, I think Sebastian Fundora is the most experienced and the guy at 154 pounds. Some good matchups to come. Yeah, it's just, are they able to do it once again? We had the first wave of 154 here from what I would say like 2019, 2018, 2019, and then ended in around 2022 with Jermell Charlo becoming the undisputed champion with this win there over Brian Carlos Castaño in the rematch. But now it's like we refresh that, and then now we can see these guys here at 154 pounds, including a couple of other fighters, that may not be active or have been on here. You know what I'm saying? My guy, brother Joe's in the building. Hopefully, all is well with you. Here, like I said, chopping up here with this midweek report. Talk about first here with these 154-pound rankings and see, what could be, shaping up here for the next, I would say, 4 to 6 months, right? So, as I was mentioning there, just going through this real quick, Virgil Ortiz Jr. there is number 1. Still don't know why he's number 1. He's going to be facing Erickson Lubin at number 5. Okay, you got Sebastian Fundora there at number 2. Of course, would have had his bout October 25th. There in it's going to be pushed back, so to speak, right? So it should be pushed back. Bakum Zaliev there at number 4. He says, why is Israel Madrimal there at number 3? That's what I'm talking about. Like, how do you have, again, as I mentioned, you have him losing to Terrence Crawford on August 3rd of last year. You have him losing to Virgil Ortiz there on February 22nd of this year. And those are 2 fights, 2 losses, and he's still there at number 3. And the thing about it is, they probably put him at number 3 in order to justify Virgil Ortiz at number 1. I have no idea what's going on with that. But with that being said, they had this whole thing here the same as far as like the top 6, and then adding Boots Ennis there. Yeah, man. Yep, two consecutive losses there, man. Hold on a second. Like I said, two consecutive losses. So yeah, I mean, we go to the rec. We could go to the rec here. You should be able to see it there. You got Terrence Crawford there, and you got Virgil Ortiz Jr. there. That's what it is. Israel Madrimov 10-2 in fights. He lost them joints. So there you go. I mean, what else can we say there about all that? So I'm back on this thing here with the rankings. You know what I mean? It said, what is it? Mel moved on with Jamel. Yeah. No problem getting into the mix, but you're gonna I don't know, man. I don't know how Jamel Charlo get back in the mix. He's gonna have to fight first. That's the thing on me, man. Um, Said, will Boots step in the ring and call out Ortiz on Ortiz's fight night? No, because one, he called out Ortiz after his fight that he had here this past Saturday. The only way that I see him being out there for Ortiz versus Lubin is if they say, okay, Ortiz, you win this fight, then we're actually going to have Boots versus Ortiz next. Like actually signed, sealed, delivered. It's only with that one condition, and that if Ortiz gets the win over Erickson Lubin, then Boots can go in there and step in and all that type of stuff. And then they say, hey, we got to fight. But outside of that, I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. You know what I mean? Says, money is always key in how everyone wants to be on TV. And the avenues have grown tight to do so. Yeah. I mean, what options do you have now? You got Amazon Prime. That ain't network television. That's just something, that's like on the spot that, hey, you can just hope that subscribers, current subscribers, right, are going to be in to tune in to watch it. And then you also got to factor in if there are going to be people that will subscribe to Amazon Prime just for those events. And I'm not even talking about pay-per-view yet. I'm just talking about like a regular card. Now you got to add pay-per-view to it. Makes it even tougher. Netflix, you got like the same thing as far as like, monthly subscription, or if you got like a thing with like T-Mobile or something like that with a plan that adds Netflix to it, then maybe you could get those viewers too. But outside of that, what avenues do you have now? ESPN is gone. We don't have no Fox, Fox Sports 1. We don't have no HBO and Showtime. That's been long gone. So what? And the thing with DAZN is like DAZN is a subscription service that's basically, an app, so to speak. So it is what it is on that. You know what I mean? Championship back. Nah, man. Like, yeah, but off of just two fights, nah, I don't know about all that though. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's the whole thing on the TV bit. Is that you really don't have that many avenues for these fighters to get something unless you got somebody that's willing to just put in the money just to put in the money. And that's why people talk about the Turkey Al-Sheikh Riyadh season stuff, but that's mainly to, boost or be a promotion towards Saudi Arabia or the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and boosting tourism to that country. I mean, they've done it with other sports. No different here. Where are we? We're about, 2 years in. We're going to be 2 years in for Riyadh season since that, fight card headlined by Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou. Now, I don't know. We might have a report card of sorts here within the next couple of weeks for Riyadh season over the past 2 years, and then we got to see, what's up and what's next. Having that Turkey Al-Sheikh having an acquisition of Ring Magazine, how will that affect things? Having the involvement of TKO, how will that affect things? We gonna see, because that's gonna be another one here with the TKO and how they're gonna do their whole league and seeing how they get fighters involved, and then will they be included in the ring rankings? That's gonna be something to also look out for there on that front. But here, like I said, with the 154-pound rankings, you got a number of these fighters that are out here, either have a fight coming up, would have had a fight coming up, like if I said Sebastian Fundora, or kind of like looking for opponents to see what's good or what's happening. Like I said, you got a world champion in Sebastian Fundora that's rated at number 2. He was formerly the unified champion, but given that he faced Tim Tszyu in a rematch instead of Xander Zayas, that's why he only has the WBC belt. Xander Zayas won the WBO belt, in a bout that was at the theater at Madison Square Garden. Won by decision. Props to him. You got, of course, Backroom Murtazalia that hasn't fought in a year. You know what I'm saying? Thing about it is, we'll see. Done. And then you got a Bosperado that was, as they said, elevated or emailed the WBA championship, right? So they kind of like pushed the thing there with the top 10. It says, Israel Matchroom being aligned with Turkey, Alashik, and Matchroom Boxing, pretty much Matchroom Boxing. Not to see him surprised at number 3. I would have been more impressed with them taking a loss with Boots last week and staying at 3. Hey, but I guess they didn't want to match them two up. Maybe that should be an idea. I haven't seen really that many people kind of like suggest that Israel Madrimov versus Boots Ennis, but we'll see how that goes. But have to see here with Brother Joe, what he's seeing with that. But we might get some more information on that later on down the line. We'll see how that goes. But as you see right there with the ring rankings, how that kind of like shapes itself out, right? I wanted to see if I could find something here real quick. Actually, you know what? Let me see if I could run this here real quick, right? Because I wanted to, have like a comparison of sorts. Not sure when this was done, because it might have been like earlier in the month or something like that. But I'm gonna check to make sure though. But yeah, because I don't see him on there. But I want to go into this here. This is the Transnational Boxing Rankings Board rankings on it, right? And you see how it had that. They got Fundora at 1, Backroom at 2, Brandon Adams at 3, Virgil Ortiz at 4, Boachuk at 5, Madrimov at 6, Jesus Ramos at 7, Erickson Lubin at 8, Xander Zayas at 9, and Abbas Barao at 10. You know what? I'm gonna man. This is kind of why I kind of lean towards the rankings from the Transnational Boxing Rankings Board, because they kind of get it a little bit. You know what I'm saying? We said that's who Key should have fought. It was Backroom. AB, but as my guy Brother Joseph says, if you ain't a ticket seller, you ain't gonna get no day, and you ain't got a promotional company that has like a TV deal or a broadcast deal or a network deal or any type of deal, then you ain't got dates for your fighters. And Main Events is the promoter there for Backroom Murtazalia, and they ain't really got no dates. They ain't got no TV deal. So that's why you ain't seeing Backroom Murtazalia really in the fight. So that's the thing about it. I mean, so now as I see there, or as you see the rankings there from the Transnational Boxing Rankings Board in comparison to ring rankings. But when they kind of like update theirs, we'll probably see if we can check it out. But yeah, it said shuffle a little bit around, but yeah, not bad. Yeah, not bad at all. But as I mentioned there with Jesus Ramos, right? He's about to be fighting for the WBC interim title there at middleweight. So having him there in the rankings is like, I mean, he ain't gonna be there, later on down the line. So I mean, I don't know if that's gonna be, much of anything there for having Jesus Ramos in the rankings, whether it's through the ring rankings or TBRB. You know what I mean? But like I was mentioning, I would have, Sebastian Fundora at number one. As I was mentioning there, and maybe having like a Merlis Aliyev there too. Thing with Virgil Ortiz is that outside of though that close win over Boychuk, and then the Madrimov fight, it's like, what else do you have? You know what I'm saying? But given those two wins in the state of the 154-pound division and other fighters not necessarily fighting each other like that, then you're gonna have to have him within the top 5 at least for now. But Fundora, he has wins over Erickson Lubin. You know what I mean? He has the 2 wins over Tim Tszyu, and only had that that one loss to Brian Mendoza. And in that fight, he was winning that fight until we kind of got him hit. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, yep, that's right. Yeah, Jesus Ramos, man, because think about it, right? He in the fight that he had, February 1st there against Jason Rosario, that was a good little bit above 154 pounds. And then the next fight, he went, down around that, 154-pound region. But even with the fight against Jason Rosario, like people kind of like seeing that Jesus Ramos was going to be not going to be there at 154 pounds, that much longer there. So that's why you kind of like see him there going up against Shane Mosley Jr. And then that will be for the WBC interim middleweight title, right? So there you go, right? But with that being said, that kind of like gives you the rankings there, so to speak, of 154 pounds. We're gonna see how it shapes up there, particularly on November 8th. There, just looking forward to that fight between Virgil Ortiz Jr. and Erickson Lubin there to headline the fight card in Fort Worth, Texas. There, so that's gonna be something real big, right? All right. So also, we got this thing here coming up for December, right? As you got Isaac Pitbull Cruz there defending his WBC interim championship at 140 pounds against Lamont Roach Jr., right? That is scheduled for December 6th. With that, I had been told that, they're pretty much like starting camp. You got Roach Jr. that's supposed to be starting camp here within the next day or so, right? But now, we might see that the Isaac Cruz, Lamont Rose Jr. card, you could get like a little bit of an upgrade of sorts, right? Because, they're saying that we might be able to get not only a middleweight unification fight, but we might get a fight that was scheduled for October 25th to be pushed to that December 6th card, and that is Stephen Fulton versus O'Shaquie Foster. Whoops, I did it again. You know what? This is how I'm not gonna be able to get an interview, right? Let me do this correctly, okay? You're going to have O'Shaquie Foster versus Stephen Fulton for O'Shaquie Foster's WBC Super Featherweight Championship. Okay, that is scheduled to be added on to the card. It was scheduled for October 25th. Some thought it would have been there for August. Nope. So this is pretty much being pushed back again. Oh man, they gotta have this fight, man. They've been in and out of camp probably for like the past, what I would say, like 4 or 5 months. So they just waiting to get themselves in the ring. You know what I'm saying? They really thought that they could have had this fight on October 25th, but hey, with Fundora having an injury, hey, there you go. I mean, he's just out of there with that. You feel me? So, with that being said, now you got Foster versus Fulton on the card, and then you could have Janibek Alhamdulillah there against Eris Landy Lara for the WBA, WBO, and IBF middleweight titles. Carlos Adames, man, you missed out. You missed out, bro. You missed out. You could have had the fight with Janabek, but no. And you might end up fighting your mandatory challenger there in the interim. That's not a good look. That's not a good look there for Carlos Adames, right? Because I mean, what is he going to fight? Miram the Sultanov or something like that, instead of having the unification there, with Janabek. So I'm like, hey, I mean, it's still a good fight, between Janabek and Erislandy Lara, but you had Carlos Adames there that could have had the shot against Janabek, but nope. And then he has that mandatory challenger right there. And especially with Erislandy Lara, he don't have to worry about much with the number one contender there, Yoeli Hernandez. He just had a fight that was over in Hollywood, Florida on Sunday. First round knockout, stuff like that. It was easy work, absolutely easy work there for Yoeli Hernandez, because he ended up having a replacement opponent on that card anyway. So, but this kind of like shapes for a really interesting bout between Janabek and Erislandy Lara. You know what I mean? It says Carlos Adames and Jesus Ramos go ahead and get his spot. That would be a good fight. That would be a good fight there between Carlos Adames and Jesus Ramos. If Jesus Ramos gets through this bout here with Shane Mosley Jr., I guess a number of people are favoring Jesus Ramos to get that win over Shane Mosley and Jr. So there's going to be something. But, getting back to the whole mix there, as I said, Isaac Pitbull Cruz versus Lamont Rose Jr., and Janabek Hamla versus Erislandy Lara, O'Shaquie Foster versus Stephen Fulton, and Jesus Ramos Jr. versus Shane Mosley Jr. That is a very, very, very solid card, man. I would not mind that fight card at all. Shout out to San Antonio. They'll be able to get a good fight. I mean, of course, the headlining bout there, you're basically having the Isaac Pitbull Cruz being the headliner for the first time, right? And then being pushed on pay-per-view. So, they say that Isaac Cruz is like a fan favorite and all that type of stuff. Now they're basically, they're putting it to the test here on that front by having him headline a pay-per-view card, this time against Lamont Roach Jr. And, as I said, we going to see how this goes. But Steph says, I'd be pleasantly surprised if Roach wins. Be on the lookout. All I know is, one thing is, I got something that's in the works here. I guess it's going to be next week, but y'all be on the lookout for that. And my guy, Jay Watts here in the building says, yeah, that's a fire card for sure, there for December 6th, man. Those type of cards, I would like more of those there, when it comes to the, as I say, like Heyman Boxing or TGB Promotions or Warriors Boxing, or what was it? Yeah, I think it's Warriors Boxing when it comes to Luis Cubas there. So, those are the ones that kind of like put the cards together and then presented by Premier Boxing Champions. So there you got that going on for this. I really, really like that. So, but here this is kind of like headed by Tom Brown, TGB Promotions, there with the headlining bout Isaac Pitbull Cruz versus Lamont Rose Jr. for the WBC Interim Super Lightweight Championship, right? So I like that card. I think that card is like very good. You know what I'm saying? My guy Thomas Hill in the building. You know what I'm saying? What's going on, Thomas Hill, man? Yeah, Riddick Bowe right here, talking boxing. But yeah, that those 4 fights right there would be really solid. And if I could, look it up, man, I had more of the fights that was supposed to, be on there or something like that. Let me see if I could find it though, because I thought I had who could have been on the card as well. But yeah, I thought Mark Messiah was going to be on that card. We had something for Mark Messiah being on that card. I don't know if it's still going to be on there. and probably headline a PBC on Prime for that date. So you could have, let's say, 7 total fights on the card, and Mark Mexayo could be headlining the PBC on Prime portion. If they do that, then that would, I'm telling you, that man, folks would really be tuning in for that. You feel me? So you do have that, right? But with the 4 fights, if they end up presenting those 4 fights as a card there for the pay-per-view portion in San Antonio, the Frostbake Center for December 6th, that would be really, really, really good. I'll be definitely down for that. Now, other things that I wanted to touch on. One, I have to see if I could actually reach out to, as I said, what, coach, whatever it is. Not my coach, but because of sorts, right? With Prince Albert Bell, because Albert Bell is scheduled to be on the card in Miami, Florida on November 14th. So I gotta see what's going on with Albert Bell. Of course, he's been contending there. He's undefeated, and he's trying to see if he can get in the mix there. What I guess at 135 pounds, even though he couldn't, get what he wanted there at 130 pounds, but now he's there undefeated now at 135, and he could be on that Most Valuable Promotions card there Friday, November 14th, of course, headlined by Jake Paul versus Tank Davis. So we got to see what's going on with that, right? The other thing too was I've seen a couple of posts floating around about a potential fight involving Emmanuel Dapidran Pacquiao. Yeah, that's Manny Pacquiao for those who don't know. Manny Pacquiao, of course, coming off of the draw that he had July 19th against WBC welterweight champion Mario Barrios. Looks like they're trying to have him inserted into a fight scheduled for January. But the fight that I was seeing was Pacquiao versus Vasily Lomachenko. So you mean to tell me that you're going to have Manny Pacquiao that's been competing at welterweight going up against a guy in Vasily Lomachenko that ended up saying that he was retiring as of last year or whatever it was. And his last fight where he competed in was in the lightweight division. Someone explain that to me. What does that do for boxing? Like, is there anyone that's like really in pressing demand for a fight of that magnitude? And I don't know about all that. But what I could kind of say is that Manny Pacquiao could be, in the works of having a fight, in the next few months. But, I wasn't necessarily saying that it could be a Vasily Lomachenko. That to me doesn't make sense, right? But what I could say though is that Manny Pacquiao could be involved in something else. You know what I'm saying? If y'all check the Boxing Source website there, on one of the latest posts that's up right now is the rumor mill, and the rumor mill talks about Manny Pacquiao being involved in a mega double header in the month of January, but it did not involve Vasily Lomachenko. It would involve Manny Pacquiao against Rolando Rolly Romero with the WBA welterweight title on the line. Now we got to see if it's going to be getting a little bit closer to reality. But that's kind of like been some of the buzz that that we may have run into. So yeah, that's the thing about it. It's saying Rolly Romero. So you're gonna have Manny Pacquiao that could be involved in a fight for the WBC welterweight title, and then his next bout that he gets involved with could have the WBA welterweight title on the line. Now, here's my thing, right? You got Rolly Romero there as the WBA champion. If I'm not mistaken, you've had a mandatory challenger that's been floating around for some time. And they ain't really done nothing as far as like invoking that mandatory or anything like that. They haven't put for it or anything. And so that's why you have stuff like this that's out there that could be happening, is that you could have something like this happen with Manny Pacquiao, Rolly Romero being involved in a bout that would have the WBA title on the line. But with that, that's all about that Money, because wait, you could have Manny Pacquiao versus Rolly Romero, right? Or you could have Rolly Romero going up against that mandatory challenger, which is Shakur Giasov. Yeah, nah, I ain't really all too fond of that. Because has Matchroom made any phone calls to really enforce the mandatory? Not from what I haven't seen anything. So there you go, right? But yeah, it looks like it could be Manny Pacquiao versus Rolly Romero there, and then the WBA welterweight championship would be involved in all that. So we gotta see how that goes. There's also something else that's included in that article with the rumor mill that involves the WBC welterweight champion Mario Barrios, and that he could be put in a fight against another welterweight there that may have ended up fighting earlier this year, but as they say, a cash cow, but is someone that may have a clue as to who that is. I'm gonna just post something there. Shout out to the person that made the comment, but I mean that could be a rumor with that particular fighter. Okay, so there you go. That's two fights that could be on the slate for January. Of course, as I was mentioning earlier, some people have said that we could have Sebastian Fundora versus Keith Thurman rescheduled for January, but we'll see how that goes. But the the initial buzz that's been there over the past week or so is that Manny Pacquiao could be mixing it up with Rolly Romero for that WBA welterweight title at the start of 2026. We'll see how that goes with all of that. But that makes for a lot coming up for the next few months or so. As I mentioned there, we got this upcoming fight card on at the Barclays Center for the 18th, October 25th. At least in Las Vegas, that's scrapped. You know what I mean? So all we have the fights in London, right? That's coming up too. So we got to see how that goes. What else is on slate? I talked about the November 8th fight card headlined by Virgil Ortiz Jr. versus Erickson Lubin, right? We got like a few other fights that's gonna be on that card, like Floyd Schofield versus Jojo Diaz, Josh Edwards versus Zeno Voris, and Darius Fulton versus David Stevens. That's gonna be on that Fort Worth card there for November 8th. I talked about Jake Paul versus Tank Davis. That's gonna be in Miami. Of course, that's gonna involve Gary Antoine Russell versus Andy Hiraoka there for the WBA mandatory to be the kind of like honored there with Gary Antoine Russell. That's going to be his first defense of that super lightweight title. You got like a few other fights, that involve the women's bantamweight undisputed title and the WBC strawweight title there, and of course the undisputed junior lightweight titles. Therefore, it's not undisputed. Let me take that back. It's not undisputed because it's going to be 12 3-minute rounds there involving Alicia Baumgartner going up against Leila Badoun. So that's going to be that. What else is out there to kind of like look out for? You got, where is the thing there for Joseph Parker versus Fabio Wardley? That's going to be another interesting bout here coming up for October 25th. So looking out for that. Of course, you got the big fight card for November 22nd. That's going to be live on the Zone, not pay per view, but live on the Zone. So actually, that's going to be a good way to figure out if they could get new subscribers to put in money to subscribe to the Zone, whether it's for a month, for a few months, or for a year, just off of that card. Let's see how they'll be able to get some subscribers given that fight card right there. So that's going to be something to look forward to. But we got a number of fight cards to look forward to here for the rest of this year. You know what I mean? He said nobody cared about no Brian Garcia. Come on, Steph. Come on, man. Come on, yo. Oh man, but yeah, like I was saying, you got that whole schedule that's coming up here for the rest of this year. I'd say two headlining fight cards to me, November 22nd, and also, well, December 6th now, right? So I'd say three: November 22nd, December 6th, and December 27th. Now, the thing with December 27th is it's the fight card that's going to involve Naoya Inoue, Junto Nakatani, and Kenshiro Taraji. But all of those fights are going to be in Riyadh. So it would have been crazy in Japan, but they're going to have it in Riyadh. And that's the whole thing I was talking about with Riyadh season. Getting a lot of these fights and fight cards that could have been in the U.S. or U.K. or Japan or whatever, and bringing it over to Saudi Arabia in order to boost, people to visit and tourism and all that type of stuff. But at the same time, you're not going to get the overall atmospheres that you may have gotten, like, say, for example, if that fight card for December 27th was at the Tokyo Dome on December 31st. That's a takeaway. You know what I mean? But yeah, Riyadh, man. Yep, Riyadh. So there you go with that, right? But that's mostly here, what I wanted to cover for this edition of the Midweek Report. Just going through a quick analysis of the topics that have been floating around there for boxing. Like I said, we'll try to be out there for the Barclays Center that's upcoming here for October 18th. Of course, it's headlined by Danny Garcia versus Daniel Gonzalez there, right? So I wanted to see if let's see if I'll do this real quick. Let's see if we can go over the fight card, right, for that. Because like I said, I mean, we could have had Richard Comey there against Nahir Albright. Nope. Yeah, they didn't make it, right? So, with that being said here, oh man, I gotta see how we can sort this out, right? So, because I go to BoxRec and all that type of stuff to put out the fight card, but let's see how this works out. All right. So let's see here. You got it. All right, y'all got it. All right, there, in the middle or whatever it is, so the second thing on here, right? It says Danny Garcia versus Daniel Gonzalez there. You got, Dominique Crowder against Fernando Diaz. It's on the card. You're going to have Chris Colbert on there against Blas Ezekiel Caro. Gabe Rosado will be on there against Vaughn Alexander. You got, Damian Neba there against Joey Doesco. That could be a good little scrap there in the heavyweight division. You got Keith Colon going up against David Calabro. Right, you got a couple of fighters had their pro debuts on there. You got Matt Gonzalez versus Wilfredo Flores in the super lightweight division. You got Rishat Mati versus Jose Angulo there in the welterweight division, and Quincy Williams versus Chris Rodriguez, and Christian Candelosi versus Victoriano Santillan. So he got like a good amount of fights that's going to be on here for that fight card coming up at the Barclays Center. So there you go. So as I always go through with this, that's what I got for y'all, man. Till next time, I will catch y'all later. Peace out.